"I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas," said the taxi driver with a broken voice as she stared at the illuminated street. She didn't know the passenger beside her was a millionaire. She just wanted to be with her daughter this Christmas. Little did she know that trip would change their lives forever. "Mothers don't cry on Christmas," Francisca Machado repeated to herself as another treacherous tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand, without taking her eyes off the Christmas traffic in Mexico City. The digital clock on the dashboard read 8:17 p.m. on December 24th. Christmas Eve, though for her it was anything but good. Through the windshield, the glowing decorations were distorted by the light rain falling over the city. Hurried families crossed the streets with bags of gifts, fathers carrying sleepy children, couples huddled under the same umbrella. And there she was, alone in her yellow taxi, while her little Anna waited with Donna Mercedes, the elderly neighbor who watched her when she had to work. "Anna should be opening her gift right now," murmured Francisca, glancing sideways at the framed photograph on the car's dashboard. In it, a 4-year-old girl smiled, showing her tiny milk teeth, with 2 perfectly braided pigtails and a red dress that Francisca had sewn by hand. The sound of a notification on her cell phone momentarily pulled her from her thoughts. It was a message from Donna Mercedes. "Anna already ate dinner. She asks what time you'll arrive. I told her Santa Claus visits later for girls whose moms work hard." Francisca felt her heart shrink. She quickly typed a response. "Tell her mommy will arrive as soon as possible. Tell her to behave with you. Thank you for watching her, Donna Mercedes." She didn't have the courage to add that she still had at least 4 more hours of work if she wanted to cover the taxi's monthly payment due the next day, or that the electricity bill had a red final notice stamp, or that the rent for the small apartment they shared was overdue for the 2nd consecutive time. The traffic light turned green, and Francisca advanced, catching a fleeting glimpse of her face in the rearview mirror. She had deep dark circles under her eyes. Her black hair, usually tied back in a ponytail, had rebellious strands escaping on the sides. At 28 years old, expression lines were beginning to etch prematurely on her forehead and around her eyes. "It's not fair to Anna," she whispered, feeling guilt and helplessness mix in her throat. "A child should be with her mother on Christmas." Francisca remembered the excitement in her daughter's eyes weeks earlier when she had shown her in a magazine the doll she wanted Santa Claus to bring her, a doll that cost almost a week's worth of her income, but which she had still managed to buy by eating less herself for a month. That gift, wrapped in shiny paper with Christmas motifs, waited under the small potted plant with lights that served as their Christmas tree in the apartment. But a gift without the presence of the giver loses its meaning. She turned onto the main avenue, where traffic grew denser due to the holidays. Impatient honks from other drivers mixed with distant carols escaping from commercial stores. A group of young people crossed in front of her taxi, laughing boisterously, probably heading to some celebration. Francisca allowed herself a moment of self-pity as she waited for traffic to move. "If Carlos hadn't disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy," she murmured, thinking of Anna's father, who simply vanished upon learning he would be a dad, leaving her to face motherhood alone. The memory of Carlos always brought a mix of anger and disappointment. They had been a couple for almost 2 years. She had believed in his promises, in their plans for a future together, but a positive pregnancy test was all it took for him to show his true nature. "I need time," was the last thing he said before blocking her number and disappearing from her life. Francisca no longer cared where he was. The only thing she regretted was that Anna would grow up without a father. The taxi app on her phone rang, indicating a new ride. Francisca blinked several times to clear her tear-blurred vision and accepted the trip. The pickup address was a few blocks away in the Polanco area. "At least it's a good tipping zone," she thought with a hint of optimism as she turned toward the meeting point. A few minutes later, Francisca pulled the taxi up in front of a luxury restaurant decorated with exquisite Christmas taste. The facade glowed with golden lights, and valet parking attendants served guests arriving in high-end vehicles. She felt a pang of discomfort parking her modest yellow taxi amid so much luxury. She waited a few minutes, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel. The app indicated the client was about to come out. Through the window, She watched waiters in impeccable uniforms attending elegantly dressed families entering and leaving the restaurant. All smiling, all celebrating. Francisca felt that knot in her throat again, which had become her faithful companion in recent hours. Her phone vibrated with another message from Dona Mercedes. Anna is already asleep. She was very tired. I told her Santa comes while she sleeps. Francisca closed her eyes for a moment, holding back the urge to cry. Her daughter would fall asleep without her goodnight kiss on Christmas. The sound of knuckles gently knocking on the passenger window startled her. Turning her head, she saw a well-dressed man about 35 years old in a dark coat that seemed to cost more than everything she owned. He had perfectly combed black hair and a short, carefully trimmed beard. Francisca rolled down the window. "Taxi service?" she asked in her best professional tone, quickly hiding any trace of emotion in her voice. The man nodded and discreetly pointed to the app on his phone. "Yes, I requested a ride to Lomas de Chapultepec," he replied in a deep, melodious voice. Francisca unlocked the doors, and the man got into the back seat. Immediately, the taxi's interior filled with the scent of expensive, subtle perfume. She adjusted the rearview mirror and could see her passenger, looking out the window with a thoughtful expression. "Exact address?" she asked, preparing to start driving. "Paseo de la Reforma 2620, please," he replied without looking away from the window. Francisca nodded and put the car in motion, merging into the Christmas traffic. The first few blocks passed in awkward silence. She could feel the passenger's occasional glance in the rearview mirror, as if he were evaluating her or deciding whether to start a conversation. "Lots of traffic for Christmas Eve, huh?" the man finally commented, breaking the silence. "Yes, sir. Everyone rushing to get home," Francisca replied mechanically, without diverting her gaze from the road. Another tear threatened to escape, and she blinked quickly to hold it back. The last thing she needed was a client seeing her cry. Clients wanted efficient, professional taxi drivers, not emotional women with personal problems. However, she wasn't quick enough. Through the mirror, she noticed the man watching her intently, noticing her emotional state. "Are you okay?" he asked in a tone that seemed genuinely concerned. "Of course, sir, it's just allergies," she lied, clearing her throat. The man fell silent for a few moments, as if deciding whether to believe her or not. Francisca wished the ride would end soon. Lomas de Chapultepec was about 20 minutes away in normal traffic conditions, but with the Christmas congestion, it could easily be 40. Through the mirror, she saw the passenger's gaze shift to the dashboard, stopping on Anna's photograph. "Your daughter?" he asked with genuine curiosity. Francisca gripped the steering wheel tighter. She usually avoided personal conversations with clients, but something in the man's tone made her respond. "Yes, sir. Her name is Anna. She's 4 years old." The man smiled slightly. "She's very pretty. She looks a lot like you." "Thank you," she replied, feeling a pang of maternal pride that momentarily eased her sadness. "She's a very smart girl. She's excited about Christmas." At that age, children live the magic intensely. The innocent question was like a dagger straight to Francisca's heart. She felt her throat close up and tears welling in her eyes again. "Yes, she's very excited." She managed to respond, but her voice broke on the last word. This time, she couldn't hold back a tear that rolled freely down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, hoping the passenger hadn't noticed, but it was in vain. "Sorry," she said, trying to regain composure. "It's been a long day." The man leaned slightly forward. "Are you working on Christmas Eve?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. Francisca nodded silently, unable to trust her voice at that moment. From the corner of her eye, she saw the man frown slightly. "And your daughter, who's with her knight?" In any other circumstance, Francisca would have considered so much prying into her personal life inappropriate. But there was something in this man's way of asking, a genuine concern perhaps, that disarmed her usual defenses. "My neighbor watches her when I work. She's an older lady who's very good with Anna," she explained, stopping at another red light. She actually hesitated a moment before continuing. "Anna is already asleep. I couldn't be there to tuck her in." She didn't know why she was sharing this with a complete stranger. Maybe it was the need to vent, or perhaps the Christmas atmosphere that invited confidences. The man was silent for a few moments, as if processing what he had just heard. "That must be hard," he finally commented. Francisca let out a bitter laugh. "I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas," she said almost in a whisper, more to herself than to her passenger. "But bills don't pay themselves." At that precise moment, upon uttering those words, something changed in the atmosphere inside the taxi. Francisca felt a strange mix of shame for having exposed herself like that, and relief for having expressed what weighed so heavily on her. What she didn't know was that her passenger was no ordinary executive. What Francisca Machado was completely unaware of was that the man sitting in the back seat of her taxi was Oliver Marquez, one of Mexico's most successful and discreet businessmen, whose fortune was counted in hundreds of millions. Oliver Marquez observed the woman driving the taxi closely. In the last 10 years, he had become an expert at reading people, a skill indispensable in the business world where intentions were rarely expressed in words. But there was something different about this woman. Her sadness was authentic, without pretensions or dramatics. It was the silent pain of someone accustomed to suffering without an audience. "How long have you been a taxi driver?" Oliver asked, trying to ease the tension that had built up. Francisca cleared her throat before responding. 3 years, sir. Before that, I worked in a department store, but the hours didn't allow me to take care of my daughter." Oliver nodded, processing the information. Through the taxi window, the Christmas lights paraded by, creating reflections that occasionally illuminated Francisca's face. Despite the evident fatigue, she was a beautiful woman. She must be about 28 or 30, he calculated. Too young to have those worry lines marked on her forehead. "And the girl's father?" he asked, and immediately regretted it. It was too personal a question for a stranger. "Sorry, I didn't mean to pry." But to his surprise, Francisca responded without apparent annoyance, as if the question had opened a valve that needed to release pressure. "No problem. Anna's father disappeared when he found out I was pregnant. I never heard from him again, and I'm not interested in knowing." She said it with a coldness that contrasted with the emotion she had shown earlier when talking about her daughter. Oliver knew that tone. It was the one he himself used when talking about his father, who had abandoned him at 12 years old. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "Men who abandon their children are cowards," she completed. "But I don't complain. Anna is the best thing that's happened to me in life." The taxi stopped at another light. On the corner, a man dressed as Santa Claus handed out candies to passing children while a small band played carols. The scene was almost a mockery of the pain Francisca felt at that moment, forced to work while others celebrated. "Anna deserves a better life than I can give her," Francisca continued, surprising herself by sharing something so intimate. "Sometimes I wonder if I should send her to live with my mother in Veracruz. There she'd have a yard to play in. She'd go to a better school." "But she wouldn't be with her mother," Oliver interjected. "And that has no price." Francisca looked at him through the rear-view mirror. For a moment, their eyes met. There was something in this stranger's gaze that disconcerted her. It wasn't pity, but something deeper, like genuine understanding. "It's easy to talk when you don't have to choose between being with your daughter or being able to feed her," she responded with more harshness than intended. "Sorry, I shouldn't have said that." "No, you're right," Oliver acknowledged. "I spoke without thinking." The light turned green, and Francisca continued the trip. Silence settled between them again. But it was a different silence, less uncomfortable. "What do you do?" Francisca asked, trying to change the subject. Oliver hesitated for a moment. He was used to this question but rarely answered honestly. His name occasionally appeared in business magazines, but he kept a low profile, avoiding the media exposure that other entrepreneurs sought. He preferred to be the anonymous face behind Marketech, his technology company that employed more than 3,000 people in Mexico and Latin America. "I'm an entrepreneur," he finally replied, opting for vagueness. "I have a tech development company." "That must be interesting," she commented without much enthusiasm, evidently out of courtesy. Oliver smiled faintly. It was refreshing that someone didn't show curiosity about his life or work. Most people he interacted with daily were too interested in his fortune, his connections, what he could do for them. It has its moments, he replied. Though sometimes I wonder if it's worth dedicating so much time to building something that keeps you away from what really matters. Francisca looked at him again, through the mirror with genuine curiosity. This time, like what? Like family? Or having time for yourself, to, I don't know, simply enjoy the little things. His response seemed to surprise Francisca. She probably expected him to talk about yachts or trips to Europe, not values she prioritized in her own life. I thought successful entrepreneurs enjoyed working all the time, she commented. That's what we want the rest of the world to think, he replied with a conspiratorial smile. The truth is, sometimes I'd trade all the success for a normal day, without pressures or expectations. Francisca let out a small, incredulous laugh. Well, whenever you want to switch lives, I'll lend you my taxi, she joked. And for the first time since Oliver had gotten into the vehicle, he saw a genuine smile light up the woman's face. It was a beautiful smile, he thought. The kind that completely transformed a face, revealing a different person beneath the layer of worries and fatigue. As they advanced along Paseo de la Reforma, decorated with spectacular Christmas lights and illuminated trees along the avenue, Oliver made an impulsive decision. It wasn't like him. As a businessman, he calculated every move, assessed risks, considered consequences. But something about this night, this woman and her story, pushed him to deviate from his usual script. Can I ask you a personal question? He finally said. Francisca nodded with some caution. What time does your shift end? The question seemed to disconcert her. Oliver could see her expression change, tensing slightly. Don't worry, he added quickly. It's not what you're thinking. It's just that I have an idea. A proposal. What kind of proposal? She asked with evident wariness. Oliver realized how that had sounded and hurried to clarify. Look, I know this will sound strange coming from a stranger, but tonight I had a business dinner that got canceled at the last minute. My parents passed away years ago, and I have no siblings. I was going to spend Christmas Eve alone at home. He paused, aware of how irregular his proposal was. What I'm trying to say is, why don't you end your shift now? I can pay you what you'd earn for the whole night, and besides, you could go pick up your daughter, so you can be together for Christmas. Francisca braked abruptly, taking advantage of no cars behind them. She turned to look directly at Oliver with a mix of confusion and incredulity on her face. Are you joking? No, I'm completely serious, he replied calmly. No one should work on Christmas Eve if they can avoid it, especially if they have a daughter waiting for them. Francisca turned back to face forward and continued driving, processing the strange proposal. With all due respect, sir, I don't need charity, she finally said in a tone that tried to be firm but revealed her internal dilemma. I appreciate your intention, but it's not charity, Oliver interrupted. Think of it as an exchange. You spend time with your daughter, and I. He hesitated for a second. I save myself a lonely night at home. Maybe you could join me for dinner. I have reservations at a nice place. Francisca fell silent, evidently debating between her pride and the desperate desire to be with her daughter that night. You don't even know me, she finally said. Why would you do something like this for a stranger? It was a valid question, and Oliver himself wasn't sure of the answer. Why did he feel so compelled to help this woman? Maybe because in her eyes he saw the same loneliness he felt, though for different reasons. Because it's Christmas, he simply replied. And because sometimes fate puts people in our path that we need to meet. It sounded corny even to his own ears, but it was sincere. At that moment, he realized he really didn't want to spend another Christmas Eve alone, contemplating the city from his penthouse, wondering if all the professional success compensated for personal loneliness. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, he continued. We can do something that makes you feel safe. Maybe your neighbor could join you, or we could dine in a public place of your choice. Francisca watched him with a mix of distrust and temptation. Oliver could see the conflict in her eyes. Why would you do this for us? She insisted. Oliver sighed. It was a question he didn't have a rational answer for. Honestly, I don't know, he admitted. I just know that when you said you only wanted to be with your daughter this Christmas, something resonated with me. The taxi stopped at another light. Francisca seemed to be waging an internal battle. Finally, she looked at Oliver again through the mirror. Are you serious? This isn't some kind of cruel joke. Completely serious, he assured. You can think about it until we get to my house. You don't have to decide right now. Francisca nodded slowly. Oliver could see the idea beginning to take shape in her mind as a real possibility. My original address is just a few blocks away, he said. But if you decide to accept, we can go straight to pick up your daughter. And if you decide not to, I'll understand perfectly. As the taxi advanced through the illuminated streets, Oliver surprised himself. In his 35 years of life, he had never done something so spontaneous and unpredictable as inviting a stranger taxi driver and her daughter to spend Christmas Eve with him. However, as he observed Francisca's profile silhouetted against the Christmas lights, he felt that for the first time in many years, Christmas might mean something more than just another day on his calendar. The taxi stopped in front of a modest apartment building in the Roma neighborhood. Francisca turned off the engine and sat motionless with her hands still gripping the steering wheel. During the last 10 minutes of the trip, she hadn't said a word, immersed in an internal debate that Oliver respected by remaining silent as well. Is this your house? Francisca finally asked, observing the 3-story building with a worn but dignified facade. No, Oliver replied with a slight smile. It's where your daughter lives, right? Francisca looked at him through the rearview mirror in astonishment. How did you know? I changed the address in the app 10 minutes ago, he explained. I assumed you'd made a decision. It was true. After turning the proposal over in her mind, Francisca had discreetly changed the destination in her taxi app, replacing Oliver's address in Lomas de Chapultepec with her own, where Dona Mercedes was watching Anna. It had been an almost unconscious act, as if her hands had decided for her before her mind. I'm not sure it's the right thing, she confessed, turning to look at him directly. I don't even know you. Oliver nodded, perfectly understanding her doubts. It's a sensible decision to doubt, he replied. In your place, I would too. They fell silent again. On the street, some families passed carrying gifts or bags of food. The night was advanced, but the city was still awake on Christmas Eve. Look, Oliver finally said, taking out his phone. I understand your reluctance. Let me suggest something. Search my name on the internet. Oliver Marquez. Verify who I am before making a decision. Francisca hesitated a moment, but finally took out her own phone and typed the name into the search engine. Her eyes widened in surprise as she scrolled through the results. You're the founder of Marketech, she murmured, looking at him with new eyes. And you're on the list of the most influential entrepreneurs in Latin America. It's just a title magazines put, Oliver replied with evident discomfort. He never liked media attention, however limited, but at least now you know I'm not just any stranger with dubious intentions. Francisca continued reading, growing more astonished. It says here you donated 5 million pesos to rebuild schools after the earthquake and that your company offers full university scholarships to low-income students. Oliver shrugged. It's the least I could do. Francisca lowered the phone and looked at him fixedly. Why would someone like you take a regular taxi on Christmas Eve? It was a valid question. A man with his fortune would normally have a driver or at least use luxury transportation services. My driver is visiting his family in Guadalajara, Oliver explained. And sometimes I like to, connect with reality. Getting in a taxi like anyone else helps me remember where I come from. Francisca studied him for a moment, assessing the sincerity of his words. And where was that? Where do you come from? Iztapalapa, he replied simply. My mother cleaned houses in the Lomas. I grew up seeing opulence from the other side. Something changed in Francisca's gaze. An invisible barrier seemed to have been torn down between them. The revelation that this millionaire had grown up in one of the city's humblest neighborhoods established an unexpected bridge. My father was a construction worker, she shared in response, as if sealing a kind of tacit pact. He worked on building several of those luxury buildings where people like you live now. People like me? Oliver repeated with a melancholic smile. It's funny how life turns, isn't it? Francisca nodded. Then, after a moment of reflection, she seemed to make a decision. I'm going up to get Anna, she finally said. But we'll dine in a public restaurant, and I'll tell Dona Mercedes exactly where we are. That sounds perfect, Oliver agreed. And to make you feel safer, you can take a photo of my ID and send it to someone you trust. Francisca nodded, appreciating the gesture. Oliver took out his wallet and handed her his voter ID. She took a photo with her phone and then returned the document. Wait here, she said as she opened the taxi door. I won't be long. Oliver watched her walk toward the building and disappear through the entrance. He leaned back in the seat, wondering at what point the night had taken this unexpected turn. Just hours ago, he was in his office, frustrated by the cancellation of the dinner he had organized with potential foreign investors. Now he was about to spend Christmas Eve with a taxi driver and her young daughter. His phone vibrated. It was a message from Isabel, his assistant, asking if he needed anything before signing off for the holidays. Oliver replied with a simple all in order. Enjoy your Christmas. He didn't mention anything about his plans. Isabel had worked with him for 5 years and had never seen him so surprised as when that afternoon he told her he had no plans for Christmas Eve. The sound of the building door opening pulled him from his thoughts. Francisca was coming out accompanied by a small girl wrapped in a red coat with a matching hat. Beside them, an older woman with silver hair walked with a slow but firm step. Oliver got out of the taxi to introduce himself. The elderly woman, who must be Dona Mercedes, examined him with narrowed eyes, evaluating him with the wisdom that only years grant. Dona Mercedes wants to join us, Francisca explained in a tone that made it clear it was non-negotiable. I hope that's not a problem. Not at all, Oliver replied sincerely. It will be a pleasure. He crouched down to be at Anna's level, who was watching him with curious and slightly sleepy eyes. She was a precious girl, with big dark eyes like her mother's and small freckles dotting her nose. Hello, Anna, my name is Oliver. He introduced himself in a soft voice he reserved exclusively for children. Your mom told me you were waiting for Santa Claus. The little girl nodded seriously. Mom says he comes when I'm asleep, she replied, rubbing one eye with her coat fist. But I don't want to sleep yet. Oliver smiled. That's perfect because I was thinking we could go eat something delicious before Santa arrives. Would you like that? Anna's eyes lit up. Can we have pizza? She asked with sudden enthusiasm. Anna, Francisca intervened in a warning tone. Pizza sounds excellent, Oliver replied, looking at Francisca as if asking for her approval. Francisca sighed, but nodded with a small smile. I know a place that's open late and makes the best pizzas in the city, Oliver added. If that's okay with you. Yes, Anna exclaimed, suddenly awake and enthusiastic. Dona Mercedes, who until now had remained silent observing the interaction, stepped forward. Young man, I don't know what your intentions are, but I warn you I watch over these two like they're my own family, she said firmly, pointing at him with a wrinkled but steady finger. And I have the police on speed dial. Dona Mercedes, Francisco exclaimed, embarrassed, but Oliver wasn't offended. On the contrary, he smiled with genuine appreciation. I'm glad to know they have someone watching over them too, he replied respectfully. And I assure you my intentions are exactly what I've expressed. To share a Christmas Eve dinner with you instead of spending it alone. The elderly woman studied him for a few more seconds before nodding, apparently satisfied with what she saw. Well, in that case, let's go for that pizza, she finally said. But no pineapple. Fruit has no place on a decent pizza. Oliver laughed, feeling the tension dissipate. Totally agree, Dona Mercedes. As he helped the elderly woman into the front seat of the taxi and Francisca settled Anna in the back seat next to him, Oliver experienced a strange sensation. It was as if, for the first time in many years, Christmas had regained some of the shine it lost after his mother's death. Francisca took the wheel again, but now her posture was different. The rigidity in her shoulders had decreased, and though she still showed some caution, her face reflected evident relief. Where is this pizza place? She asked, starting the engine. In Coyoacán, Oliver replied, near the center. A friend of mine keeps it open especially tonight for families celebrating late. Christmas pizza. Anna exclaimed enthusiastically, clapping her small hands. As the taxi merged into the night traffic, now lighter than before, Oliver watched through the window as the city glowed with Christmas lights. It was the same city he saw every day, the same buildings, the same streets. But tonight, somehow, everything seemed different. Anna began to hum Silent Night in a childish voice, probably a song she had learned in kindergarten. Dona Mercedes soon joined in with a raspy but tuned voice. And to everyone's surprise, including his own, Oliver also began to sing softly, remembering the lyrics his mother had taught him decades ago. Only Francisca remained silent, focused on driving, but through the rearview mirror, Oliver could see something that hadn't been there before. A small, contained smile, perhaps even reluctant, but definitely a smile. The Napoli pizzeria in the heart of Coyoacán looked almost deserted when they arrived. Only a couple of tables were occupied by families who, like them, were celebrating Christmas Eve away from home. The place, decorated with garlands and small twinkling lights, exuded a cozy and warm atmosphere that contrasted with the night's cold. Oliver, exclaimed a stocky middle-aged man with a white apron and a thick mustache, approaching them with open arms. I thought you weren't coming this year. Change of plans, Marco, Oliver replied, shaking the man's hand and giving him an affectionate hug. I hope you have a table for 4. Marco looked curiously at the peculiar group. A young woman visibly tired but with undeniable natural beauty, a small girl with bright eyes fascinated by the Christmas decorations, and an elderly woman scrutinizing him with a critical gaze, as if evaluating the establishment's cleanliness. Of course, there's always a table for you, Marco replied with a smile. Your friends, Oliver quickly completed. Francisca, Anna, and Dona Mercedes. It's their first time here. Marco nodded, catching the implicit message not to ask more questions. The best table then. By the fireplace as always. He led them to a round table near a cozy artificial fireplace that provided pleasant warmth. Anna ran to sit in the chair closest to the fire, fascinated by the dancing flames inside the protective glass. Is the fireplace real? She asked with wide eyes. It's electric, my child, Dona Mercedes explained, sitting next to her. It doesn't burn for real, but it warms just the same. Oliver helped Francisco with her chair, an automatic gesture that she received with surprise, but without rejection. As they settled in, Marco approached again with menus. The usual for you, Oliver? Tonight we'll let Anna decide, Oliver replied, looking at the girl. What kind of pizza do you like, Anna? With lots of cheese, she replied without hesitation. And ham, and everything. The adults laughed at her enthusiasm. A supreme for the little chef, Marco noted. And for the others, they agreed to share a variety of pizzas, and Marco retreated to the kitchen, not before bringing them a basket of freshly baked bread with butter and a pitcher of fresh water. How do you know this place? Francisca asked while Anna entertained herself drawing on a paper napkin with the crayons Marco had left for her. Oliver took a sip of water before answering. Marco was my mother's co-worker cleaning houses in the Lomas, he explained. When he saved enough money, he fulfilled his dream of opening this pizzeria. He was the first to believe in me when I started my company. He lent me his savings when no bank would give me a loan. And now you're a millionaire, Dona Mercedes commented frankly. I suppose you paid back the loan with interest. Oliver smiled at the direct observation. I offered to make him a partner, but he preferred to keep his independence. He says he prefers kneading pizzas to money, he replied. But he'll always have my support, though he rarely accepts it. Francisca observed the interaction, silently readjusting her prejudices about the rich. This man didn't fit the image she had of ostentatious millionaires disconnected from reality who occasionally rode in her taxi. Why did you decide to help us? She finally asked, the doubt that had been circling her mind since accepting his proposal. The truth. Not that answer about the Christmas spirit. Oliver held her gaze. There was something intense and honest in his eyes that made Francisca suddenly feel vulnerable. When you said you just wanted to be with your daughter this Christmas, he began, choosing his words carefully. It reminded me of the last Christmas I spent with my mother before she passed away. She was working that day too. She always worked on Christmas because they paid double. I was 12 and pretended I didn't care, but the only thing I wanted was for her to be with me." He paused, momentarily lost in the memory. The following year she got sick and couldn't work. We spent Christmas together, but she was already very weak. She died shortly after. He continued. "Since then, Christmas has always been complicated for me." The silence that followed his confession had a different weight. Francisca felt her perception of Oliver transform again. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "It was a long time ago," he replied, shrugging. "But I suppose when I saw you with your daughter waiting at home while you worked on Christmas Eve, something resonated with me." Anna, oblivious to the adults' conversation, proudly raised her drawing. "Look, Mom, it's Santa Claus with his sleigh." Francisca looked at the colorful scribble with maternal tenderness. "It's beautiful, my love. Do you want to show it to Oliver?" Anna extended the drawing to Oliver with a mix of shyness and childlike pride. He took it with the same seriousness he would give a $1 million contract. "It's the best Santa drawing I've seen," he commented with genuine appreciation. "I love how you drew the reindeer." Anna smiled widely, revealing the gap of a missing baby tooth. "They're Dasher, Dancer, Prancer." She began reciting the names with concentration. "Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donder, and Blitzen," Oliver completed, surprising everyone. "And the most important one, Rudolph," Anna exclaimed, laughing. "The one with the nose." Donna Mercedes observed the scene with narrowed eyes, evaluating every interaction with the wisdom that only years grant. Francisca noticed the elderly woman's initial distrust beginning to soften. Marco returned with steaming pizzas, and the aroma of melted cheese and fresh herbs filled the air. Anna clapped enthusiastically when Marco placed a small pizza especially for her, with the cheese forming a smiling face. "Courtesy of the house for the princess," he said with a wink. Over the next hour, the atmosphere gradually relaxed. Anna kept the conversation alive with her endless questions and innocent comments, creating a natural bridge between the adults. Donna Mercedes shared anecdotes from her Christmases in Michoacán when she was young. Oliver talked about his business trips, carefully avoiding mentioning figures or luxuries that might make his companions uncomfortable. And Francisca gradually lowered her guard, allowing herself to laugh and enjoy the moment. And then, Donna Mercedes continued with one of her stories. "The turkey ran out the door, with my uncle Rogelio chasing it through the whole town in his underwear." Laughter echoed around the table. Even Francisca, who had maintained a contained smile for much of the evening, laughed openly, showing a face completely transformed by joy. Oliver observed her discreetly. It was as if the tired and sad Francisca from the taxi had been replaced by another person. Her laughter illuminated her entire face, softening the worry lines that had marked her forehead. She was beautiful, he thought, not with the superficial beauty he was used to at high society events, but with an authentic, unpretentious beauty. Anna began to yawn, fighting to keep her eyes open despite her enthusiasm. It was almost 11 p.m. "I think someone is ready to receive Santa Claus," Francisca commented, stroking her daughter's hair. "I'm not sleepy," Anna protested, though her eyelids were falling heavily. "I want to wait for Santa." "Santa won't come if he finds you awake," Donna Mercedes explained with a conspiratorial tone. "Those are the rules." "Besides," Oliver added, leaning toward Anna as if sharing an important secret, "the reindeer need all the children to be asleep to land on the roofs. It's a safety issue." Anna seemed to consider this information seriously. "How do you know?" she asked with the implacable logic of a 4-year-old. "Because," Oliver hesitated for a moment, "I once knew one of Santa's helpers who told me." A professional secret. Anna's eyes widened, impressed by this revelation. "You know one of Santa's helpers?" she whispered, as if afraid someone else might hear. "Yes. And he told me that children who go to sleep early on Christmas Eve get the best gifts," Oliver replied with absolute seriousness. This seemed to finally convince Anna, who nodded gravely. "Then we should go home," she decided with childlike determination. Francisca looked at Oliver with a mix of gratitude and amusement. She mouthed a silent thank you. Marco approached with the bill, but Oliver dismissed it with a gesture. It's taken care of, Marco. As always, Marco nodded with complicity. Merry Christmas, my friend. And Merry Christmas to you too, ladies, he added, addressing Francisca and Dona Mercedes with a theatrical bow that made Anna laugh. As they prepared to leave, Oliver noticed Francisca seemed slightly worried. Everything okay? He asked quietly while Dona Mercedes helped Anna put on her coat. Yes, it's just that. Francisca hesitated. The taxi is parked in a no-parking zone, and it's late to get another ride. Oliver understood immediately. My driver can take us, he offered, taking out his phone. I just need to make a call. I thought your driver was in Guadalajara, Francisca pointed out, confused. Oliver smiled, caught in his lie. That's my personal driver. But the company has a 24/7 driver service for emergencies, he improvised, hoping to sound convincing. It'll only take a few minutes. Francisca didn't seem completely convinced but nodded, too tired to question further. 10 minutes after Oliver's call, an elegant black SUV pulled up in front of the pizzeria. The driver, a middle-aged man dressed in a dark suit and discreet tie, got out and opened the back door professionally. Mr. Marquez, he greeted with a slight bow. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Ernesto, Oliver replied. I hope I didn't interrupt your family dinner. Not at all, sir. My kids were already asleep. The man replied with a calm smile. My wife understands that these special shifts help us pay for Christmas gifts. Oliver nodded, feeling slightly guilty for requiring his services on a night like this, but relieved it hadn't caused a major inconvenience. Francisca observed the interaction with curiosity. The contrast between the modest taxi she drove and this luxury vehicle with a personal driver was a reminder of the vastly different worlds they inhabited. Is this your car? Anna asked, completely awake again at the sight of the impressive vehicle. It's the company's, Oliver explained, helping her in. Do you like it? It's huge, she exclaimed, exploring the spacious leather interior with wonder. And does it have a TV? Oliver laughed as he helped Dona Mercedes settle in. Not exactly, but it has lights that change color. Want to see? He pressed a button on the armrest, and the interior roof lit up with soft lights alternating between blue, green, and purple. Anna clapped delightedly, momentarily forgetting her sleepiness. It looks like a Christmas tree. Francisca got in last, evidently uncomfortable with so much luxury. She sat rigidly, as if afraid to damage something just by touching it. First stop, your house, Oliver indicated to Ernesto, providing Francisca's apartment building address. The vehicle moved silently. Anna, fascinated with the changing lights, pointed out each color change with exclamations of wonder. Dona Mercedes watched out the window, apparently impressed, though trying not to show it. Thank you for tonight, Francisca finally said quietly, just for Oliver to hear. I don't remember the last time I saw Anna so happy on Christmas. The pleasure has been mine, he replied sincerely. I didn't remember what it was like to genuinely enjoy these holidays. They looked at each other for a moment, and something indefinable passed between them. It wasn't just attraction, though that was there too. It was mutual recognition, a connection based on shared experiences despite their vastly different lives. The SUV advanced through the now almost empty city streets. Most families were already home celebrating around tables full of food or opening gifts under decorated trees. Christmas lights shone everywhere, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Look, Mom, Anna suddenly exclaimed, pointing to the sky through the window. A shooting star. Everyone looked where the girl was pointing. Indeed, something bright was crossing the night sky. Make a wish, my child, Dona Mercedes suggested tenderly. Anna closed her eyes tightly, squeezing her small hands as if praying. When she opened them, she looked at Oliver curiously. Did you make a wish too? Oliver nodded solemnly. Of course, you should never waste a shooting star. What did you wish for? Anna insisted. Anna, you're not supposed to ask that, Francisca gently reprimanded. If you say it, it won't come true. Actually, Oliver intervened with a smile. I don't mind saying it. I wish this wouldn't be the last time we share a Christmas. The comment created a momentary silence in the vehicle. Dona Mercedes raised an eyebrow with a knowing expression. Anna smiled widely, apparently delighted with the idea. And Francisca? Francisca blushed slightly, lowering her gaze to her intertwined hands on her lap. We're not part of your world, she finally said, her voice barely audible. After tonight, we'll go back to our normal lives. And what if it doesn't have to be that way? Oliver suggested, surprising even himself with the implicit proposal. Before Francisca could respond, the SUV stopped in front of her apartment building. We've arrived, sir, Ernesto announced. The moment of intimacy broke. Anna was already struggling with her seatbelt, eager to get out and go upstairs where Santa Claus could visit her. Wait, sweetie. Francisca stopped her, helping with the belt. Oliver got out first to help Dona Mercedes, who accepted his hand with the dignity of a queen. The elderly woman looked him directly in the eyes as she got out of the vehicle. You seem like a good man, Oliver Marquez, she said quietly, so only he could hear. But if you hurt these two, I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. Don't underestimate an old woman like me. Oliver held back a smile at the elderly woman's fierce protectiveness. I would never, Dona Mercedes, and I assure you my intentions are honorable. The elderly woman nodded, apparently satisfied. Then I'll see you at breakfast. I make chilaquiles that will make you cry with happiness. With that, she headed toward the building entrance, leaving Oliver momentarily confused. Breakfast. He didn't remember mentioning any plans for the next day. Francisca got out of the vehicle with Anna by the hand. The girl immediately ran to Dona Mercedes, probably to share some important secret about Santa Claus. This left Francisca and Oliver alone for a moment beside the SUV. Your neighbor just invited me to breakfast tomorrow, he commented, still surprised. I think I've passed some kind of test. Francisca smiled, shaking her head slightly. Dona Mercedes has a sixth sense for judging people. She's rarely wrong. A silence loaded with possibilities ensued. Oliver knew he should say goodbye, but something kept him anchored to that moment, reluctant to end it. About what I said in the car, he began. You don't have to explain, Francisca interrupted. I understand it was the moment. The Christmas spirit. No, he gently contradicted. It wasn't just that. Look, I know it sounds crazy. We've known each other for just a few hours, and our lives couldn't be more different. But there's something here, he made a vague gesture between them. Something I haven't felt in a long time, maybe never. Francisca looked at him with a mix of hope and fear. Oliver, we're from different worlds. You're a millionaire entrepreneur, and I'm a taxi driver who barely makes ends meet. These stories don't end well in real life. Who says they can't, he replied. My mother cleaned houses for a living. I don't come from an aristocratic dynasty, Francisca. I know exactly what it's like to struggle day to day. But now you live in another world, she insisted. A world where people like me only exist to serve you coffee or drive your taxi. That's not fair, Oliver protested, hurt by the characterization. I'm not that kind of person, and I think you know it. Francisca sighed, running a hand through her hair in a tired gesture. I'm sorry. You're right, you're not. It's just that I'm scared. Of what? He asked, taking a step toward her. Of getting my hopes up, of believing something like this could work, of Anna getting attached to you, and then you disappearing when you get tired of playing at being an ordinary man, she responded with brutal honesty. I can't afford that luxury, Oliver. I can't risk hurting my daughter. Her words hit Oliver hard. He couldn't deny they were legitimate concerns. I understand your fears, he finally said. And I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm just asking for a chance to prove to you that this isn't a passing whim. From the building entrance, Anna called her mother impatiently. Mom, we have to go up so Santa can come. Francisca smiled in her daughter's direction. I'm coming, sweetie, she replied before looking back at Oliver. I have to go. I know, he nodded. But before you do, let me make a suggestion. Tomorrow is Christmas. Let Anna enjoy her gifts in the morning, and then, if you agree, I'd like to invite you both to a special place, a place I think you'll both love. Francisca seemed to hesitate. You don't have to answer now, Oliver added quickly. I'll come for breakfast, as your neighbor suggested, and you can decide then. One last impatient call from Anna hurried Francisca's decision. Okay, she finally conceded, but I promise nothing. That's enough for me, Oliver smiled. They looked at each other for one more moment, both aware that something significant had begun that night. Then, Francisca turned and walked toward the building where Anna was waiting, jumping with excitement. Oliver watched them enter, feeling a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, a happiness he hadn't experienced in years. On the other, the fear that Francisca might be right. Could two people from such different worlds build something together? He returned to the SUV, where Ernesto waited patiently. Home, Ernesto, he indicated as he got in. And Merry Christmas. May I ask something, sir? The driver said as he started the vehicle. Go ahead. In all these years working for you, I've never seen you like this. So, I don't know how to describe it. So what? Oliver asked curiously. Ernesto looked at him through the rearview mirror with a knowing smile. So human, sir, so genuinely happy. Oliver leaned back in the seat, reflecting on those words as the SUV drove away. Through the window, he saw a light turn on in one of the third-floor apartments. He imagined Francisca and Anna preparing for Santa's arrival, placing cookies and milk next to their small decorated potted plant that served as a Christmas tree. And for the first time in many years, Oliver Marquez felt he had found something far more valuable than all his millions, the possibility of belonging to something real. Christmas morning dawned with a surprisingly clear sky over Mexico City. The first rays of sun filtered through the small window of Francisca's apartment, creating golden patterns on the worn wooden floor. Anna woke up before everyone, as expected. Her shouts of excitement upon discovering the gifts under the small decorated potted plant woke Francisca from an unusually deep sleep. Mom. Santa came, the girl exclaimed, jumping on her mother's bed. And he brought the doll I wanted. Francisca sat up, rubbing her eyes and smiling at her daughter's overflowing enthusiasm. Despite the fatigue, she felt a lightness in her heart she hadn't experienced in a long time. The events of the previous night seemed almost like a dream. Let me see, she said, getting up and following Anna to the living room. The gift she had bought for her daughter with such sacrifice weeks ago was now in her small hands. Anna hugged it as if it were the most valuable treasure in the world. But there was something else. Next to where the gift had been, there was another larger package wrapped in different shiny paper than the one she had used. And that one, she asked, confused. Did you open it too? No, Mommy, I only opened mine, Anna replied. That one has your name. Francisca approached cautiously. Indeed, a small card on the package read for Francisca, from Santa Claus. She immediately recognized the elegant slanted handwriting she had seen the night before when Oliver signed the pizzeria bill, though he thought she hadn't noticed. Aren't you going to open it, Mom? Anna asked impatiently. Santa brought a gift for you, too. With slightly trembling fingers, Francisca undid the elaborate bow and tore the paper. Inside was a dark blue velvet box. Upon opening it, she held her breath. It was a delicate silver necklace with a taxi-shaped pendant, finely detailed, with tiny wheels that actually turned and a small blue stone embedded in the roof. It's a taxi like yours, Anna exclaimed, approaching to examine the necklace. It's very pretty. Francisca couldn't speak. The gift was perfectly appropriate, not ostentatious or excessively expensive to make her uncomfortable, but personal and meaningful enough to show it had been chosen with care. She wondered when Oliver had had time to get it. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It must be Dona Mercedes, Anna said, running to the door. I'm going to show her my gift. But when Francisca reached the door, it wasn't just Dona Mercedes waiting on the other side. Next to her, holding 2 paper bags with what seemed to be fresh ingredients, was Oliver. He was dressed casually, with jeans and a simple sweater, very different from the elegant suit of the night before. Good morning, he greeted with an almost shy smile. Dona Mercedes said I could help with breakfast. I brought some things. Anna greeted Oliver with the familiarity of someone who had known him all her life, immediately showing him her gift. Dona Mercedes entered with her usual energy, heading straight to the small kitchen, as if it were her own. And look, Oliver, Anna was saying, proudly showing her doll. Santa brought it to me. Wow, it looks like you were a very good girl this year, he replied, crouching to her level. Santa only brings gifts like that to the most special children. Oliver's gaze rose to meet Francisca's, who remained motionless by the door, the necklace still in her hand. Good morning, she finally said. I didn't expect to see you so early. Donna Mercedes called me at 6, he explained with a resigned smile. She said she needed help carrying the groceries. She's quite persuasive. Francisca gave an accusing look to the elderly woman, who pretended to be completely absorbed in organizing ingredients on the kitchen counter. Did you like your gift? Oliver asked quietly, discreetly pointing to the necklace in her hand. Before Francisca could respond, Donna Mercedes intervened from the kitchen. Oliver, come help me with this, young man. These old bones aren't what they used to be. Oliver gave Francisca one last meaningful look before obeying the elderly woman's call. Anna followed him, eager to show him how her doll could change expressions when a button on its back was pressed. Francisca watched the scene from a distance. Oliver helping Donna Mercedes beat the eggs while listening attentively to the elderly woman's instructions. Anna sitting on a high chair chattering nonstop about Santa Claus and his reindeer. It looked like such a natural family scene that for a moment she felt a pang of fear. It was too perfect, too unreal. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Aren't you coming to help us? Oliver called, noticing her hesitation. Donna Mercedes says you make the best coffee in the city. With a sigh, Francisca put the necklace in her bathrobe pocket and joined them in the kitchen. Over the next hour, the four worked in harmony preparing a Christmas feast. Chilaquiles with green sauce, scrambled eggs with chorizo, refried beans, and sweetbread that Oliver had brought from a nearby bakery. As they ate, Anna kept the conversation alive with her endless childlike enthusiasm. Oliver responded to each of her questions with genuine interest, never showing impatience or condescension. And what are we doing today? The girl finally asked, looking expectantly at the adults. Oliver looked at Francisca, as if asking permission. She nodded slightly. Well, if it's okay with your mom, he replied. I was thinking we could go to a special place. What place? Anna asked excitedly. It's a surprise, he replied with a wink, but I guarantee you'll love it. Francisca observed the interaction, still battling her own fears. Part of her wanted to believe this could work, that Oliver really was different from all the men she had known before, that he wouldn't disappear like Carlos did when things got tough. But another part of her, the one that had learned to protect itself, still doubted. After breakfast, while Anna helped Donna Mercedes wash the dishes, or rather played with the bubbles while the elderly woman washed, Oliver sat next to Francisca on the small living room sofa. Are you still thinking we're from worlds too different? He asked quietly. Francisca toyed with the necklace she now wore, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Oliver. It's not that simple, she replied. It's not just money or social classes. It's about expectations, about what we want in life. And what do you think I want? He asked, genuinely interested. Francisca looked him directly in the eyes. I don't know, Oliver. That's what scares me. We barely know each other. Then let me show you, he replied, gently taking her hand. I'm not asking you to decide anything today or tomorrow. I'm just asking for time to really get to know each other. The touch of his hand was warm and comforting. Francisca looked toward the kitchen, where Anna was laughing heartily as Donna Mercedes playfully splashed her with water. Her daughter's happiness was the most important thing, and for some reason she couldn't quite understand. Anna had instantly connected with Oliver. Okay, she finally conceded. What's that surprise you mentioned? Oliver's smile lit up his entire face. It's something I've been planning to do for years, but never found the right occasion, he explained. A small personal project that I think makes sense to share today with you. An hour later, Oliver's SUV stopped in front of a 2-story building in a quiet area of Iztapalapa. The contrast with the luxurious skyscrapers of Polanco or Santa Fe couldn't be more evident. Here the houses were modest, the streets less impeccable, but there was an authenticity that no exclusive neighborhood could replicate. Where are we? Francisca asked as they got out of the vehicle. In the neighborhood where I grew up, Oliver replied with a mix of nostalgia and pride, and specifically in front of the building I bought 5 years ago. He opened the main door and led them inside. The lobby was simple but welcoming, decorated with framed children's drawings and abundant plants. There are lots of toys, Anna observed, pointing to a room visible through a half-open door where shelves full of books, board games, and art materials could be seen. It's a community center, Oliver explained as they advanced. When my mother died, I swore that one day I would create a place where the neighborhood children could come after school while their parents worked. A safe place with hot meals and homework help. Francisca looked at him with new eyes as they toured the place. A spacious and well-equipped kitchen, several study rooms, even a small backyard with playground equipment. Everything simple but functional and evidently well-maintained. It's usually full of children, Oliver continued. But today is Christmas, so they're all with their families. The only ones working today are, as if on cue, two older women appeared from the kitchen, drying their hands on colorful aprons. Oliver, we didn't know you were coming today, one of them exclaimed, approaching to give him a strong hug. Rosa, Teresa, let me introduce Francisca, her daughter Anna, and Dona Mercedes, Oliver presented. I promised them a Christmas surprise, and I couldn't think of a better place than this. The women greeted them warmly, especially Anna, who was already curiously exploring the toys in the common room. We're preparing food for the families coming later, Teresa explained. Why don't you show them the place while we finish? As Oliver guided them through the center, Francisca noticed small details that spoke of the heart behind the project. Photographs of smiling children on the walls, a discreet plaque dedicating the place to the memory of Elena Marquez, donation boxes full of carefully organized clothing and toys. Do you come here often? She finally asked. 3 times a week, he replied. None of my employees know. Not even Ernesto, my driver. I get dropped off a few blocks away and walk here. I'm not the CEO of Marketech. I'm just Oliver, Elena's son, who reads stories and helps with math. Something definitely melted inside Francisca. The image of this man, who could be on any exclusive beach in the world, choosing to spend his time helping children in the neighborhood where he grew up, tore down the last of her defenses. Why are you showing me this? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Because I want you to know me for real, he replied, gently taking her hands. Not the millionaire, but the man, the boy who grew up on these streets, who knows what it's like to have a mother working on Christmas, who understands the value of what you do for Anna every day. Francisca's eyes moistened. From the corner of her eye, she could see Anna playing happily under Dona Mercedes' attentive watch, who was chatting animatedly with Rosa and Teresa as if they were old friends. When I said I just wanted to be with my daughter this Christmas, Francisca murmured, I never imagined it would end like this. Do you regret it? Oliver asked, a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. As an answer, Francisca stepped forward and, standing on tiptoes, gave him a soft kiss on the lips. It's the best Christmas we've had in years, she whispered against his mouth. Oliver wrapped her in his arms, deepening the kiss. When they separated, both were smiling. That means you'll give me a chance. You'll give us a chance? He asked. Francisca nodded. Step by step, she conditioned. No rush. We have all the time in the world, he agreed, kissing her forehead. A shout of joy interrupted the moment. Anna was running toward them, holding up a drawing she had just made. Look, she exclaimed, showing her masterpiece. It's us. The childish drawing showed 4 figures holding hands, a tall woman with what seemed to be a taxi on her head, a small girl in the center, a stooped figure that must be Dona Mercedes, and a tall man with a big smile. Above them, Anna had drawn a huge red heart. It's beautiful, my love, Francisca said, crouching to hug her. Do you like it, Oliver? The girl asked, looking expectant. You drew me too, because you're part of our family now, right? Oliver crouched next to Francisca, deeply moved by the innocent declaration. I would love to be part of your family, Anna, he replied with a slightly trembling voice. If you and your mom allow me. Anna looked at her mother, who nodded with a smile full of promises. The girl jumped for joy and hugged both of them at the same time. It's the best Christmas gift, she exclaimed. Better than all the toys. Over the heads of the three, Donna Mercedes watched the scene with bright eyes. She approached Teresa and Rosa, who were also contemplating the moment with touched smiles. "It seems Santa Claus brought my Francisca the gift she needed most," the elderly woman commented, discreetly wiping away a tear. "Someone who really sees her for who she is." As Anna dragged Oliver and Francisca to show them more of her discoveries in the center, Teresa nodded wisely. "Sometimes," she said, "the best Christmas gifts are the ones we never dared to ask for." And in that moment, surrounded by her daughter's love and the promise of a new beginning, Francisca thought that after all, perhaps Christmas miracles did exist. Sometimes they arrived in the form of an unexpected passenger in your taxi on the loneliest night of the year.